So just fixing to get back on the bike here. I'm sitting chilling doing some time lapse at Lock 17 on Lock 17 Road, one of my favorites. This is my go-to road. Now I just found me another loop the other day, so I'll be doing another loop down the Lock 17 Road. Lots of curves, lots of beautiful, splendorous trees, not a lot of traffic. I think there's been 3 cars since I've been sitting here for the last 30, 40 minutes. But I'm just getting back on the bike, and somebody left me a comment on the Beartooth Pass video about internet. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I made a video. Wow, 4th gear. I made a video a little over a year ago about my internet service, but I probably didn't go into a lot of detail about how I use internet on the road. Basically, I was, for several years, I have been using Sprint, because even when I'm at home, I need reliable, unlimited bandwidth. So I stuck with Sprint, probably one of the worst carriers in America. But at the time I got onto Sprint, they had one of the few unlimited plans, truly unlimited plans. And since I was grandfathered in, I just stayed with Sprint. Even when I had my first trip back in 2015, when I was a true digital nomad. I mean, I wasn't working full time at the time, but I was a full digital nomad. If I was going to work, I wasn't going to spend my time in a coffee shop. So, but that was the start of it back in 2015, and I'd been on Sprint for several years before that. But I had, let's see, I went through a couple of phones. Golly, I went through 3 phones. And I started panicking, thinking, I'm not going to be able to get this Sprint service turned on. And I want something more concrete. And I want to be able to go and get a signal wherever I go. So I started investigating other carriers. And I found Visible. And I want to interrupt this right now, and I'll put a link up here to the Visible video I did a while ago. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about Visible. It's a prepaid service, but they're not paying me to promote them, so I don't want to talk more about them. They used to actually give me credit for bringing them customers. If I brought them a customer, they would give me, I think, $20 off, half off the month, and it's only $40. But I don't want to talk about Visible. I want to talk about how I get internet on the road. I think this was the question today, was how do you do this? And the thing, if you're not a techie, it's kind of hard to understand how folks do this, but it's basically you're using your phone as a hotspot, as a router, and I think that was part of his question, was how do you do this? Well, most phones, you can use your cell phone as a router. In other words, it takes in internet and spits it back out. Sometimes you can spit it out to multiple devices. Funny thing is, when I had Sprint as my carrier, they would not allow you to use your hotspot or your phone as a hotspot, because they were giving you such a great deal, and they were. I mean, it got to the point, I think it was like $90 a month. But at the time I had it, it was the best deal out there because nobody else had it. The only other plan that I ever ran into that was even close was another digital nomad I met out in the desert. And he was on a grandfathered Verizon plan back when, you know, I guess back when people weren't pulling down massive amounts of bandwidth over their phone and sharing it, which is what a hotspot is. When you're sharing your internet from your phone to another device, it's called a hotspot. or tethering. That's another way. So a couple of ways you can do it. It's in your settings. You can, well, actually, you can Bluetooth it too. You could Bluetooth your internet to another device. You can Wi-Fi your internet to another device, or you can plug directly in with a cable, which is what I do most of the time and have been doing for years. Just plug my USB into my phone and plug the other one into my laptop or a computer or whatever device you want to run. Conceivably, I guess you could run it into a router and then route it to several places. But most carriers, I'm going to pull my shield down to prevent bugs, and but most carriers in the past would not allow you to have unlimited Wi-Fi and share your data. But then they figured out, well, hell, you know, if we let them share their data, they'll go over their data plan every month, or maybe. And so they turned the hotspots. Like Sprint never did that. Sprint never turned my hotspot on. They never allowed me to do it. So the way I did it on Sprint was I had to route my phone to be able to bypass all Sprint's restrictions. I'm getting real deep in the mud here, but just to keep in mind, a router, if you don't understand routers take network traffic and route it. So in other words, if you're on the internet, you're going through multiple routers typically. You're being routed through different networks to get to the internet a lot of times, and then to get to the different websites and email and all that other stuff, you're going through multiple routers there too. So the internet is covered up with routers. And if you do what I'm doing, if you're using your phone as a hotspot, that is essentially a router. It's routing traffic to and from your phone. So if, say, I turn my phone on to be a hotspot, you can come up to my phone with your laptop or your cell phone and get on my internet service through my phone. That's how it works. And that's about as simple as I can explain it. But it's basically you're sharing your internet connection via your phone. So you can work as a digital nomad, like I have for, well, the past 5 years. I've been a digital nomad. Doesn't mean I've been all over the place all the time, you know, because I've been home a lot over the past 5 years. I've been home probably half the time in the past 5 years I've been, you know, in one place. But I've also been using my phone as my internet. So instead of hooking up with somebody into somebody else's network, you know, plugging in my computer to their network or getting on their Wi-Fi, I'm using my Wi-Fi, and it works great. And it depends on your carrier. Like I said, Sprint was great as long as you had a good signal. Sprint was great. But unfortunately, they didn't have a good signal in most of America. If you were close to a big city or an interstate, you were golden. But I like to stay out in the woods, and it got to be trouble. I like to hang off the side of a cliff, and there's a lot of places I could not get internet where I like to hang out and camp. So, but now I am using Verizon's network in a service called Visible. It's actually one of Verizon's little offshoots, and it's a well-kept secret. Nobody else knows about it, apparently. And I think it's probably just one of those, and I've probably said this before, it's probably just one of those things where they wanted to offer a prepaid service, and they wanted to capture some of the people that they would not be able to capture with Verizon. So in other words, they know their customers pretty well, and they know that certain types of people are probably not going to become their customer. They'll be a T-Mobile customer or a Sprint customer like I was. So they wanted to capture that part of the business. That's my understanding. They wanted to capture that part of the business. So they had to offer an extreme deal. And it is. It's an extreme deal. $40 a month. It's less than half of what I was paying for Sprint with way more coverage. I mean, night and day. I probably had 10% of the country coverage with Sprint. I feel like I've got, 80% of the country coverage now. Meaning I can go just about anywhere that's not in a cave or a valley or a canyon or something like that. If I can see telephone lines, typically I've got coverage. So, there's some exceptions, and you can look at their map. And there's some parts of the country that are just not covered. Like I just found out, northeastern Utah is not covered at all. Like this whole corner of northeast Utah above Salt Lake City is not covered. And I'm not sure why. It's probably just their Verizon's premium coverage. But I don't know. They sell that bandwidth to people, and that's why I didn't get phone service. I didn't get internet. Nothing. So, but that's the basics. The basics are I use an incredibly cheap service that has unlimited phone and data, and they don't throttle. At least I haven't run into any throttling, and I use a ton of bandwidth. An average month, I'm probably chopping down 300, 400, 500 gigabytes of data, which would cost you a pretty penny if you were actually on Verizon. And well, actually they've got what they call an unlimited plan now, but they throttle you. So as far as I know, Verizon still does not, to this day, does not have a truly unlimited internet plan. So they are throttling you. When you run over your whatever 10, 20, 30 gigs of data, they deprioritize you. So in other words, if you're running over your budget of data, Verizon will say, okay, well, we're going to give these other guys that haven't run over their data, we're going to give them priority. So they're deprioritizing you. They're putting you at the bottom of the list of the people that want data. And I kind of understand why they do that. And I'm years ago I would have been okay with that. I would have been very happy having been deprioritized on a Verizon network, because I don't always have to have super bandwidth. I typically don't stream. I don't do a lot of voice over IP, so the stuff that I have to have really wide bandwidth all the time, I don't really have to have that. I upload video. That's the big thing that I do. Sometimes I upload files. But most of the time I just need to be able to send and receive emails. I like keeping in touch with the world. I like to be able to keep in touch with my customers. So having voice is very important. Having data as much as I can is very important. But I don't have to have, 20 megabits a second like is typical with Verizon pretty much everywhere. 10 to 20 megabits a second. I don't need that much bandwidth. I need T1 speeds. I need to be able to get my work done during the day. That's pretty much it. So, and Visible fills that bill. I would think that Verizon would do the same thing. I've just never had Verizon and tried to use their unlimited service. I just know that everybody that I know has tried it. Besides that one guy that I met in the desert that had grandfather unlimited, everybody had problems with it. So if you're a digital nomad, if you're trying to find a way to make a living as a digital nomad, a web worker, a remote worker, anything like that, check out the video, the Visible video. That should help you. I haven't been to the West Coast. Let's see. I've only been as far west as Colorado and Idaho this trip. So I don't really know how it works on the West Coast, but I've been all over the Rockies, all the way up to southern Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, and it works great up there. Well, there's some spots. I mean, typically the dead spots are the same dead spots that Verizon has. So, you know, if you're in the middle of nowhere, there's no towers. You're not going to get internet. You're not going to get phone, typically. Some places you'll get phone, you won't get internet. But, you know, I expect stuff like that. But, you know, as long as I can go towards civilization, get halfway back to civilization and get some internet, everything's fine. But if you got more questions about the technical details of how I do what I do as a nomad, a digital nomad, leave a comment below and let me know what your question